Hello everybody, welcome back to the latest episode of the Turfcast podcast pre-game show with me, Joe Redmond, ahead of another massive game at the Turf this weekend as we welcome Aston Villa to the Turf. Saturday, 3 o'clock, usual time. As I've just said though, this one is a massive one and they keep on coming thick and fast, don't they, these massive games, and that is starting to piss me off if I'm being honest with you. We've gone on this amazing run. Yes, without that amazing run, we would be dead and buried. Obviously, we picked up 10 points out of the last 4 games. So without that, we'd gone or about to go. So it is obviously brilliant that we've been on this amazing run of form. But the most annoying thing in the world is Leeds and Everton have also picked up form recently. Leeds not so much right now, but just before we started our run of form, they're on good form. Of course, they only lost to Man City last time out, to be fair. And in the first half, they looked okay. But Everton getting that win against Chelsea, you would think after the run that we've been on, we'd at least have a bit of breathing space. All right, we've got 2 points. But you would have thought it would have been a bit more. These teams that are down there with us just won't die. Well, obviously Norwich have just died, but you know what I mean. The ones that we're directly competing against. And it's starting to give me a lot of anxiety. I don't know about you, but you've probably seen Viz's tweets as well. I'm exactly the same as that. He said he's waking up thinking about Leeds United's injury list. He's going to bed thinking about Everton's game in hand. I'm exactly the same. I'm sure all of you are too. The anxiety is just absolutely killing me. But as usual, what we're going to do, I'm going to talk about the relegation battle for a little bit now. I have got an interview. With a Villa fan lined up. It will be coming up in around 5-10 minutes. But just for those of you, I'm sure you all are aware of the current state of play in the relegation battle. But just to go through it again, just one more time. So Norwich are down. I say one more time. I'm 100% going to do it on the next pre-game show and on the post-game show. So it's not one more time. But on this show, we're going to do it again. So Norwich are down, as you can see there, the arrow next to their name. Relegated to the Championship. Then come Watford on 22 points. 34 games played in 19th. They're going to go this weekend unless they pull out a shot result. Everton, 33 games played on 32 points. Then come Leeds in 17th. 34 games played, 34 points. Then Burnley in 16th. 34 games played, 34 points. Now, like I said, without this amazing run of form, we'd only be on, say, for example, if we'd have lost every single game, which probably is a bit drastic to be fair, but after that Norwich game, it probably looked like the way we were going. We would obviously be on 24 points. So we'd be above Watford, but we'd still be 8 points away from Everton and 10 points away from Leeds. So it'd have been a very, very, very tough task. So thank God we've managed to turn it around with Jackson coming in, and we've given ourselves, at the very least, a fighting chance. But yeah, that's the most annoying thing is to me, because obviously we beat Watford. We went 5 points clear at the time, didn't we? And I remember to myself thinking, right, Everton are going to get beat against Leeds here. They are going to get against Chelsea. They are going to get beat. They didn't. They won. Chelsea were shy. And having said that, a lot of the focus was on how bad Chelsea were, but hats off to Everton. They did what we do to teams, or did do to teams back in the day, when we just frustrate the life out of them. We defend for our lives. We get in their faces. We wind them up. The crowd's behind them. A lot of stuff was made about Everton, fans with the fireworks, and I thought that was a bit childish, a bit too much, but the atmosphere they created on the day at the Goodison, sensational. That was sensational, and that got them over the line that day. We have been sensational ourselves at the Turf recently. The atmosphere has been fantastic, and I do think that has dragged the players over the line as well. Leeds are more than capable of doing it. I think all 3 teams are going to have cracking atmospheres down there at the minute. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But of course, that is the league table. Let's just bring in Burnley's fixtures just before we bring in everybody else's. So if you're watching on the podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, they are on your screen now. If you are listening on the podcast, I will read them out. So of course, next is Aston Villa at home, winnable. Tottenham away. That's the one that's frustrating me. Tottenham away, right? This is why Saturday is massive, because we are 99% going to lose that game at Tottenham. So we've got Villa at home, then Tottenham away, then Villa away, then Newcastle on the last day of the season. For me, I think if we get 6 points, we survive. Genuinely, I do. Simply because we'll go through Leeds' fixtures in a minute. I cannot see them at the very best that they can do, in my opinion, is get 6 points. I can't see them getting 7. I genuinely can't. I know people say, well, you can't rely on Chelsea after what they did to Everton. Yes, but Everton are far better defensively than Leeds. Leeds are shocking at the back, and they have been. All right, Jesse March has come in and showed them up a little bit, but they're still conceding too many goals. So I am pretty confident that Leeds will not get any more than 6 points. And I think if we beat Villa, that gives us a gap of 3 points between us and Leeds. as I've just shown you the league table there, that will give us a 3-point gap between us and Leeds. And then Leeds won't get a point between now and not the end of the season. Sorry, they won't get a point at Arsenal. They won't get a point against Chelsea. Probably, in my opinion, fingers crossed, hopefully. So then that puts massive pressure under them when they play Brighton at home, because that's their game after that. And I'll tell you what I will do. I'll quickly bring the league's fixtures up. So when I'm talking about the league's fixtures, it actually looks nice and smooth. I should really get better at this, if I'm being honest with you, and be able to bring them up faster. But there is no physical way of doing it faster on this computer. You can even see there, if you watch it on YouTube, as it loads, it takes forever. So Leeds' fixtures are Arsenal away next, defeat. Arsenal are still going for the Champions League. I can't see them slipping up against Leeds. I genuinely can't. I think they'll have a bit of fun against their defence. Same with Chelsea. I know Chelsea were bad against Everton. But as I've just said, I think Everton can do what they did to Chelsea. I don't think Leeds can turn a game into that. I don't think Leeds are good enough at the back to be able to do what Everton did to them. They squeezed them. Leeds are quite good at squeezing, to be fair, but I don't think they'll frustrate them as much as Everton did. I think they will struggle on set pieces, Leeds, because they've struggled on set pieces all season. And Chelsea have actually done quite well on set pieces this season in terms of scoring. So I do think Chelsea will get some joy. So I do genuinely believe that Leeds lose their next 2 matches. Then after that, they've got Brighton at home. Now, I saw a stat recently that said away from the top 6, Brighton have the best away form in the Premier League. They've recently gone to Arsenal and won. They've recently gone to Tottenham and won. I think they battered Wolves 3-0 at Molineux. I think they've even won at West Ham recently. That last one might be wrong, so apologies if it is. But their away form has been class. Now, if we get the win against Villa, that gives us a 3-point cushion between Leeds and us. The pressure on Leeds will be absolutely massive there. And then, of course, we're playing Tottenham on the 15th, Leeds, and we play Tottenham before Leeds. So if we nick a point out of that, the pressure on Leeds will be sensational there. They might crack under the pressure. The fans will be nervous. I do think they'll create a good atmosphere, but say if they go 1-0 down, for example, that can very, very quickly turn toxic. And of course, they've got Brentford away on the last day of the season. They'll have nothing to play for. That game does worry me a bit, but with Christian Eriksen in the side, they're a completely different side of Everton. They are very, very good. He pulls the strings, he gets the goals, he gets the assists. So I do think they can have a bit of joy against them. But if we have a 3-point gap going into that Leeds-Brighton game, I think they will crack under the pressure. But will we have the 3-point gap? Who knows? Fingers crossed we do. But that's why this game this weekend is so big. That's Burnley's fixtures done and Leeds' fixtures done. So next, I will bring the Everton fixtures up on screen. You can see them on your screen now. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the podcast, as you can see, the difference here is they have 5 games left, whereas obviously us and Leeds only have 4. So they do have a game in hand. So their next game is Leicester away. Difficult, but winnable, I think. If they've beaten Chelsea, I do think they can beat Leicester away. And the main thing with this Leicester game is, on the day recording this, I'm recording this on Thursday, they're playing Roma tonight in the European Conference League. And I think their eggs are all going to be in that basket. I do think their focus is going to be on that. And if they get through to the final, which I don't think they will, to be fair, but if they get through to the final, then their focus is going to be completely 100% on that final. So they might not put out a weakened team as such, but they might rest a few players. They'll take the foot off the gas. So I do think Everton can get something there. We all know how bad Watford are at home. They've lost 10 consecutive games, is it now? Everton could easily put them to the sword. I think that I'm going to predict that they get 4 points out of that. Then there's Brentford. That's a weird one. I think they can win that. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about Everton's running being worse than ours. And it was before recently, because of course they've recently played Liverpool and Chelsea, as you can see there if you're watching on YouTube. But now they've got past them 2 teams. Their running is probably slightly easier than ours. They've got Brentford and Palace at home. 2 teams that aren't mugs, but 2 teams that have not much to play for. And they've got the worst team in the league at home. The worst team who are at home, but they're playing them away, if that makes sense. So I do think they'll go to Watford and get a win. I think they can get a point at Leicester. And then that gives them, that does give them a bit of momentum, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens there with them. I think they can beat Brentford at home. I think they can beat Palace at home. So, there could be quite a lot of points here for Everton. But if it goes into the final day and Everton is still in the mix or still below us and Leeds, for example, they might slip up at Leicester. Everton are very bad away from home. Let's get this thing straight. They are very bad away from home. That's why I'm only giving them a point at Leicester. But Watford are even worse at home. So I do think they could get a win there. But they could easily lose the next two, Everton, because their away form is so bad. So fingers crossed they do, of course. But then they've got the two whole. If they win them 2 all games, they could be above us by then, going into the last game. So I'm not sure we get much at Tottenham. We could get a win at Villa. Obviously, we'll talk about that more when we get to the week where the Villa game is. But if they have to go into that last game of the season against Arsenal, say if Arsenal are still only 1 point, they need a win for the Champions League, for example, I do think Everton will be in massive, massive trouble. But there's a long way to go yet, and that's just what my head is doing 24/7. I'm sure yours is as well. I just thought I'd think out loud and go through all of that with you, because that is my head all the time. I'm constantly looking at fixtures. I'm constantly looking to see if Richarlison's been banned, which he won't be, for picking that flare up and chucking it. It appeared to be chucked into the crowd. Some people have said he chucked it away through the gap. I'm not sure. I think it's irrelevant myself. If you're going to ban him, it doesn't matter where you throw it personally. Excuse me. But yeah, just thought I'd do that with you guys there so you can see what my head is like. I'm sure your head is the same as well. I'm sure you're all working it out constantly. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with some of my permutations, some of my calculations, whatever you want to call them. And one more thing as well. I asked last time for you to like the video. I'm going to do the same again. Now, the last time I checked, I'll just quickly check now. The last time I checked, I was about 29 subscribers away from 1,000 subs. Now, of course, 1,000 subs is the big milestone on YouTube. So if you can help me get to 1,000 subs, I am now 27 subscribers away from 1,000. So if you are watching this and you've already subscribed, press the like button, because that means it gets pushed out to more people. It makes more impressions, so more people are likely to watch it. And if you are a new person watching this channel now, you're a Burnley fan, you might not be a Burnley fan, you might just want to see some fan content, just subscribe. I'm only 27 away from 1,000. And once we get to 1,000, I'll stop asking for likes. I'll stop asking for subs, because we'll hit 1,000. So I won't be that bothered. But yeah, like I said, this week it is a massive one. It's Villa at Turf Moor. The return of Danny Ings, last time he played at the Turf was for Southampton. He scored the winner. Fingers crossed he isn't as good this weekend, or he doesn't. You know what? Just don't play. Just have a rest. He's earned it, and he scored last week against Norwich. He can have a rest this week. Gerard, if you're watching, definitely isn't. But if you're watching, just rest Danny. In fact, rest all of them. Stick the kids out, and then yeah, that would be great. But obviously, last time he played for Turf, he scored. We know how good he is. We know he's going to get the ball and run at the defence. We know he's a good finisher. So it's going to be a tough one. But this is massive. If we lose this one, I don't think we're going to stay up. Honestly, I genuinely, if we lose this one, then we are going to get beat at Tottenham. 95% certain we're going to get beat at Tottenham. And then the game at Villa Park, if we just lost against them at the Turf, why should we be beating them at Villa Park? I do think Villa are beatable. They hit and miss. It depends which Villa turn up. And recently, they've not been in great form. You might say they've turned a corner a little bit recently with a point at Leicester and a win away at Norwich, which something we couldn't do. People say, it's just Norwich, but we couldn't do it. So we'll see. But yeah, my head is going to, as I'm talking now, I'm thinking and then just talking out loud. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass you on to the next part of the show, which is, of course, the interview. And I am joined by Cole, and he's from 7,500 to Holt. And just like that, joining me now from the 7,500 to Holt podcast is Cole. How you doing, mate? You all right?
Good. Yourself?
Yeah, very good, mate, especially now the form has improved, especially now the Burnley form has improved. But of course, it's a big game for us, this one. Not so big for you. I look at you and I say, safe, job done. You know, they're not going to go down. They're not going to get dragged into it. I was talking to someone today and they were like, I don't know. You know, if Burnley win 2 games, Leeds win 2, Everton win 2, and Villa lose them all, they could get dragged into it. But yeah, that means 3 relegation candidates, have all got to win 2 games. You know, for 2 of us, that's 50% of our games. It's not very likely, is it? What are you thinking as a Villa fan? Are you looking over your shoulder thinking we could get dragged into it? Or are you like on the beach ready to sign the season off?
I think before the Norwich game, it definitely felt like there was a little bit of pressure. Now that you kind of sit back and look at it, I mean, you look at Leeds' schedule and Everton's schedule in particular, and you kind of sit back and think like, okay, Everton have beaten Chelsea, fair enough. I mean, they still have a very tough run in, again, so do Leeds. So there's going to be a few slip-ups. There's going to probably be a draw in there that sees one of them safe eventually. But I mean, for us, it's definitely not where we want to be. Especially after the way last season went, but it is what it is. And I mean, with our schedule that we have left, I would expect at least probably 4 points somewhere out of there, but hopefully one of those is against City on the final day, and I think a lot of people could probably figure out why. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I hate to say it's an at the beach kind of thing, but yeah, we're just kind of at that stage of the season where there's nothing to play for, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it? It happens so much in football. Teams just take the foot off the gas. They're on the beach, as you know, as a lot of people say. But your form, I think it's fair to say, hasn't been great. Obviously, you got the win against Norwich recently. And I know a lot of people at this stage do say, well, it's Norwich, but I'm quite reluctant to say that because we haven't beaten them this season. We drew at the turf against them. We got beat at Carrow Road against them. So I'm not going to sit there and say it's Norwich. I'm going to sit there and say, good win. We couldn't do it, so fair enough. But your form, you know, you've won 1 out of your last 6, is it, off the top of my head? You know, what's gone on? Is it because you've just took your foot off the gas a little bit and there's not so much to play for? You've lost focus a little bit?
It's a bit of a conundrum. I felt like, of course, when Steven Gerrard came in, you get that bounce. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't happen. It clearly did with us. Had some good wins, barely lost to Man City, and I thought that was kind of a major turning point there. Went through a little bit of a bump, won a few on the bounce, and then it just kind of happened all over again where we lost 4 in a row. And I mean, keep in mind, I think within those 4 losses, I think we lost to like West Ham and Arsenal and a few other teams. So maybe things that aren't too out of the spectrum. But I think when a lot of Villa fans look at it right now, I think I do it sometimes too. We look at last season and we try to compare it, but I feel like last season for a lot of sides was just a kind of I wouldn't say a one-off, but with no fans and that being kind of a lot of pressure kind of off the shoulders per se. It's hard to really compare it. And I don't know, you see things from a Villa perspective in the press with, oh, these aren't Gerrard's players and yada, yada, yada. And there's that whole assessment. And it's been just a really, really weird, unbalanced season. And I mean, no one had a perfect preseason. Ours was just a complete mess. And it feels like we've just been trying to catch up one game after another with a few little positive moments in between. But to be honest, I'm just looking forward to the summer and seeing what happens because it's definitely been a frustrating one to say the least.
Yeah, fair enough. Can understand that. Obviously, you started the season quite poorly, didn't you? You got rid of Smith. Obviously, you've just mentioned Gerrard. I do want to ask about Gerrard because he came in with a lot of sort of like media noise around him, obviously, because of his fantastic playing career. Did very well up in Rangers. Some people do just say, oh, it's the SPL. But, you know, to break that Celtic dominance and the fact that he's left now and Celtic have quite looking like they're going to win the league again quite easily, I think that shows how well he did up in Scotland. What are your thoughts on him so far then as the Villa manager is what I'm trying to say? Like, I presume you'll feel like it's gone probably a little bit indifferent outside looking in, started well, dropped a little bit, now maybe leveling out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like any manager that probably came in after Dean Smith was always going to be given somewhat of a little bit of, I wouldn't say criticism, but maybe a little bit of a hard time, I guess. I mean, we all know Dean Smith was a Villa fan, and at one point to have him and of course Grealish as the captain, both as Villa fans, I don't know if we'll ever see that again in my lifetime, at least.
Yeah.
Or it'll be a very, very long time. So I felt like from that perspective, it was always going to be hard. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of Gerrard coming in. I think with a lot of people, especially even outside pundits that don't really follow Villa, it was a gamble. And I mean, it did work initially. And I can see where the mindset was. I think the biggest kind of gripe for me is still, and I do get some people on social media arguing with me about this and saying there is a play style, but I still don't see it. And again, it kind of goes down to the whole it's not his squad thing. I mean, how long can you really say that? So I think that's kind of a thing with a major annoyance for me. But I don't know. People throw in the win percentages, and if you look at just his reign at Villa, we look like a little bit of a better side, and yada yada yada. But for me, I just feel like there's a few things that, as a spectator and as a fan, I can see even through a television set, kind of sitting there and thinking, I'm not seeing maybe not what I would like per se, but I'm not seeing kind of a clear identity and a clear kind of way that we're expressing ourselves. It always seems like it's a little bit of chop and change and we're just making do. So, I mean, I guess I can be pretty hands off and I'll wait till the summer and I'll give them till next season, of course. So I don't know. It just feels like a lot of this season has been a lot of excuses and a lot of kind of protecting him per se. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm not against him, but I'm still a little hesitant, of course. I've been through too many scary points of where I started supporting Villa and then being relegated to be too comfortable. So
yeah, fair enough. It's interesting that I thought it'd be quite a bit more positive when speaking about Gerrard, if I'm being honest. But you mentioned there you don't feel like he has a clear play style. What is different then from when Dean Smith was here to what is Gerrard is trying to do now, or isn't trying to do in your eyes?
um, I would say the main thing I've noticed more so, maybe not even than play style, is I wouldn't say there wasn't an accountability under Dean Smith. There's definitely a lot more kind of arm around the shoulder, comfortable post match pressers. He'd protect his players a lot more. And I feel like Gerrard's much more emotional. You can see him kind of slouching in his seat. His post match comments are very emotional in some circumstances. They've definitely gotten a little bit more, I guess, better and or more mature, I guess you could say, because some I'm thinking, okay, you probably shouldn't say that. But in terms of kind of on the pitch, again, it's so tricky to really identify it because it feels like one week we're playing one kind of setup formation with two strikers, the next we're playing with one. We could have Coutinho out on the left, and then the second half we could have him in the middle. It's just been very chop and change, and I don't want to come off as a negative fan because I don't feel like I am a negative Villa fan, but it's just one of those things where we don't really know how we're going to set up week from week. And you look at the Burnley game in particular, you guys are still a very physical side that now Sean Dyche has left. You're expressing yourselves a little bit more. You can definitely see that in the few games I've watched since his departure. And I see that and I think, okay, how does this Villa side kind of set up for that in particular? So for me, it's going to be interesting because I sit back and look at, I guess, what some people would call maybe Gerrard's core side with Coutinho in the middle in particular. And I think it might not be the easiest day, especially for him, because he doesn't seem to kind of pull up his socks per se when he's on the away days. Let's say that for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned Coutinho, and I'm kind of glad you've said that as well because last night I was doing some research for this show, and I noticed on the Villa hashtags there's a lot of not negativity towards Coutinho, but he's only turned up in 3 games. He's got missing too much. Is that a fair assessment? Do you feel like he's not? Well, you just said then he's not pulling his socks up in the away days. So he's by that logic, he's probably going missing in too many games. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I shouldn't say he's not trying or anything like that. I don't want it to come out like that, but I mean, if you look at the numbers of his goals and assists, I think literally maybe 95% of them are at Villa Park. So
Yeah.
I don't know what it is there. And I think, I mean, I've said this on our podcast as well. Um, I feel like, I mean, coming from Barcelona, where he's barely played for the last 2 or so seasons, and then to be thrown in, and I think he's literally played every game possible since. Um, it's a lot to expect for someone. You can say he's a professional, he's whatever. It is a major adaptive moment to just play game or week in and week out, I should say. So I give him some slack there, and I mean, I guess the onus maybe falls on Gerrard to make that change. I mean, we still have Emi Buendia as well, and that's been a big thing for the fan base, kind of wondering what he has to do to get back in this side. And we see him come on as a substitute, and he kind of has that hunger and passion, and we do look a little bit better at times. So it'll be interesting. I mean, for me with Coutinho, I mean, it's been probably the best signings, like biggest name that I've seen in my decade or so of being a Villa fan. But you do sit back and kind of wonder if you're going to play him week in, week out, are you really going to get the best out of him, especially in physical situations like Burnley too. So, I mean, I'm sure he'll start. I still throw that question out there, but there's no doubt in my mind anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting that because until recently, the midfield has been our weakest part all season. So a player like Coutinho could have easily had a lot of joy against us. But since Dyche has left, Westwood unfortunately got injured. And it's a shame that we had to have such a nasty injury to Ashley Westwood, who of course used to play for Villa, for Jack Cork to come in the side. But Jack Cork has come in the side and a lot of the fans have been saying it for a while, especially on this show, that Jack Cork should have been in the middle with one of the two, ideally Josh Browner, which is who he's obviously playing with now, because I could have said Westwood is injured. And Jack Cork will mop pretty much anything up. If you watch the game against Southampton, even Watford, Wolves, he was just in there making the tackles, not necessarily the crunching physical tackles, but just mopping it up and flying across and winning the ball. So hopefully Jack Cork will throw a few of them in. Coutinho will be like, nah, I don't really fancy this. I'm going to go missing for the next 85 minutes, and then we might get some joy in there. But it's also because we're not just hoofing it as much as we are doing. We get the ball, we'd look for the strikers, a big hoof. Now we're actually getting the ball down, we're playing it into feet, we're not bypassing midfield. So yeah, we might get a little bit of joy in there if Coutinho doesn't show up, but of course he's got the quality. We all know he's got the quality. So it'd be interesting to see how Coutinho plays on Saturday. But I do want to talk to you about Burnley and your perception of sort of like the things that have gone on recently. Of course, we are in the mire of a relegation battle. If it wasn't for the recent sacking of Dyche, we could well and be dead and buried by now. Obviously, like I said, we've already lost to Norwich. I've just said that earlier. But since then, we've turned it around. Obviously, we've got a point at West Ham, should have won, then won 3 games after that. So, yeah, what were your thoughts on the sacking of Sean Dyche at the time? Because the entire football world was just like, oh my God, Dyche has gone from Burnley. That's ridiculous. There was a lot of criticism. Even I was like, I don't understand why we've made this decision. But obviously now it's kind of looking like the right decision. Is that fair to say?
I guess it's too early to tell. I mean, I would say the best way to judge it is how you guys start next season in particular. I mean, you guys had a very I mean, you guys don't really spend a lot of money, so I think that's the thing too. I mean, to stay in the league for as long as Burnley have on the budget, Sean Dyche has done a wonderful job in terms of
Yeah, of
that. And
course.
I mean, that has to be massively applauded for, and I think he'll definitely be looked at by many clubs because of that. So, I mean, from the Burnley perspective, I feel like you can kind of throw some comparisons to when Jared came in. It's that bounce, it's that kind of release of emotion and maybe expressing yourselves and kind of saying, okay, I still want to be here next season. I have a job to do and I want to prove to you that I can do this. So I feel like you're probably getting a mix of that as well. So, I mean, it's definitely tough to say, is this just a new manager bounce? Okay, he's gone, I better smart my act up kind of thing like that. Or is this Burnley finally expressing themselves, being a little bit more free flowing, if I can pronounce my words? Um, it's really hard to say, to be honest, because again, it's just such an emotional release for fans, especially. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been there for what, a decade roughly, if not
Yeah,
more.
just short of a decade, 9 years, more than 9 years, like just less than 10.
So I mean, you get so comfortable and you sit back and you think of the scope of work that he's done. He's brought you up, you went down, you immediately came back up, and he stabilized you. So it's a very, it's almost, I don't want to say it's a be careful what you wish for thing, but you do see it from certain clubs where they're set in their ways one way. And maybe the one example, I don't know if it's the greatest, would be Stoke when they had Pulis and they stayed up every season and it wasn't very
Yeah.
exciting. But you know what you got. Then they start to go from Mark Hughes, had what, one great season, and then within the next 2 they were down. So I'm not saying that's Burnley or anything like that, but at the same time, I would have to say be careful what you wish for, I guess, even though I didn't want to say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of what Burnley have pulled off, one hell of a job. I think you guys are clear and safe, to be honest. I think it's between Leeds and Everton for me, and I think Everton really have to go on a run
Yeah.
here if there's any chance, but that's just
That
me.
that was my next question. I was just going to ask you, who do you think is going down? Obviously, I'm a Burnley fan, so I'm still going to look at it with a lot of anxiety. It's causing me, a lot of anxiety in my day-to-day life. I am not going to lie, especially the fact that I work in Leeds, and I've just found out that my personal trainer is changing to a guy who's a Leeds fan. So that's another big aspect of my life. It's just Leeds is pretty much part of my life that I don't really need it to be right now. But I see this game as massive. If we get beat by you at the Turf, the chances are we'll get beat by you at Villa Park, and we are going to get beat against Tottenham at Tottenham. Then the only winnable game after that is Newcastle at home. And they've obviously hit a lot of form recently. So this game is huge. We have to beat you on Saturday, in my opinion, to be able to stay up. We have to get 4 points, I think, from these games, the Burnley and Villa games. If we lose three minimum, 4 ideally. But yeah, that's my question. Who do you think is going down? Like I said, I'm a little bit anxious. This game is massive. If we beat you, I'll start feeling a lot more confident. But I said that before the Watford game. But the problem with that was Everton pulled off a result that I didn't think they were going to do. But yeah, Leeds have got Arsenal and Chelsea up next with all 2 winnable games. Everton have still got some tough games. I think Everton's running's probably eased a little bit slightly now they've got past Liverpool and Chelsea. But there's still some tough teams in there. But who do you think is going to slip into the Championship?
It's real. I mean, who do I want versus who do I think? I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to be Leeds, to be honest. I just, I sit back and I think that Jesse Marsh has come in, and I don't really see much improvement. There's been a few points here or there, and they haven't really been talked about as under threat, which I feel like is very odd. It
Yeah,
just seems very somber kind of setting around there. So I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, Everton, I think, still have a game in hand if I'm thinking correctly. So,
yeah,
and I honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Everton kind of get a surprise result here very soon again. So I don't know. I'll have to wait and see, but I think it's going to be Leeds for some weird reason. And in regards to Burnley, I think when you look at like playing us twice, which is weird that we still haven't played each other
yeah,
and we're in May.
yeah,
I would not be shocked if we lost one and drew one, to be honest. I don't know what it is against Burnley, but we always struggle. I think of that. Was it the 3-2? Was it
yeah.
last season?
Yeah, that was last season. It must seem
Yeah.
like ages ago because obviously we've not played each other yet this season, but it were last. I think we went 1-0 up, then you turned it around to 2-1. I was thinking, here we go. And obviously we managed to turn it back round again. But the year before that, obviously you still had Jack Grealish. You might have had Jack Grealish. Like, obviously you did have Jack Grealish. Like, I don't know if he played. He might have been injured. I'm not sure. But Jack Grealish absolutely ran the show at the turf on New Year's Day a couple of years ago. And that's, I think you won 1-0 or 2-0. Absolutely dominated
Oh,
us.
that was the Wesley game. Yes, that was 2-0, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely dominated that game. Jack Grealish ran the show. He absolutely ran the show. It was fantastic that game. But yeah, you said there you won't be shocked if you lost one and drew one. That would be ideal if we can come to some sort of an arrangement. You know, you'll be on 41 points. We'll get an extra 4 points, and we should see us safe really. What are your predictions for this game then this weekend?
We haven't really done that well away lately, so I would not be shocked with a 1-1. So I think I'm going to be safe and say there's your point.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll take that point if we can have 3 at Villa Park. But ideally, we need to win this weekend simply because I think Leeds do get beat this weekend against Arsenal, but they can pull out a result against Chelsea because Everton did. So I'm not relying on Chelsea again, even though Leeds are a lot worse at the back. If we can get to a point where we get an extra 3-point edge on Leeds, that's going to put the pressure on them up so much because when they play Brighton at home, if they've lost their next 2 against Arsenal and Chelsea, which is more than possible, then the pressure will be on them and they could start making mistakes. The Ellen Road crowd can get on the back because obviously big crowds always can be like that. So fingers crossed. And Brighton are good away from home. Brighton have just beaten Tottenham away from home, Arsenal away from home, West Ham as well, I think, recently. So fingers crossed. But that's pretty much it, though, for the show. Do you just want to let everybody know where they can find you, where they can listen to you, where they can watch you?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on, first and foremost. If you want to hear any Villa perspective, of course, you can find us on Twitter at 7500 to Holtz. And if you want to listen to a Villa podcast, any good audio player, you can find us. It'd be the Holtcast, or Holtcast, I guess would be the simplest way to put it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Cole. And hopefully, well, mind you, we've still got a game left. I'm going to say hopefully I'll speak to you next season, but I might even be speaking to you in 2 weeks. Who knows? Might do something a bit different so we don't have the same person on the show just in 2 weeks later. But hopefully I'll speak to you next season.
Yeah, absolutely. You might be less stressed, I guess, in a couple weeks. You never know. So we'll have to wait and see.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.